TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Iran's Yemeni proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi Tribe, launched multiple projectiles towards Israel, regrettably destroying a public school in the city of Ramat Gan. Israeli Air Force aircraft mount 2 successive attack waves against strategic Houthi targets in Yemen. Outgoing U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken asserts the necessity for Israel to translate its military successes in Gaza into enduring political successes. Jerusalem will not stand idly by as Tehran, via its Yemeni proxy Ansar-Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi Tribe, continues to launch blatant attacks against civilian communities in the State of Israel. At approximately 10 p.m. last night, a number of one-way unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, were launched from Yemen toward Israeli territory. In response, naval vessels of the U.S.-led maritime operation, Prosperity Guardian, or Task Force 153, intercepted a number of UAVs, while the remainder were successfully destroyed by Israel's naval and aerial defense array before they were able to penetrate Israeli airspace. Subsequently, at approximately 2:37 a.m., rocket alert sirens sounded throughout much of central Israel as the so-called Houthis launched a ballistic missile toward the city of Tel Aviv. Consequently, an Israeli Arrow 3 interceptor was launched toward the incoming ballistic missile, successfully intercepting it beyond the atmosphere. Nevertheless, a large debris of the intercepted projectile landed in the central city of Ramat Gan, causing devastating damage to a public school.
We arrived here after some type of debris, which we are evaluating, struck this location. We canvassed the location where the strike occurred, which is within a school. Our main mission, together with parallel forces, to include the IDF Home Front Command, Israel Police, and MDA paramedics, is to search 360 degrees the entire area, include adjacent streets, to include every house, to guarantee that there are no wounded as a result of debris. This is our main task, which is currently being implemented.
Thankfully, in what was referred to by a senior military official to TV7 as a miracle, no injuries were reported. Interestingly enough, the heinous attack against a school was dubbed by the Houthis themselves as a sensitive military target.
The missile force of the Yemeni Houthi armed forces carried out a significant military operation targeting 2 vital and sensitive military targets of the Israeli enemy in the occupied Jaffa Tel Aviv area, using 2 Palestine 2 hypersonic ballistic missiles. The operation achieved its goals successfully by the grace of Allah.
Meanwhile, at 3:15 and 4:30 a.m. successively, Israeli Air Force aircraft launched 2 attack waves against the Iranian proxy in Yemen.
Today, the IDF conducted precise strikes on Houthi military targets in Yemen, including ports and energy infrastructures in Sana'a, which the Houthis have been using in ways that effectively contributed to their military actions. Israel will not hesitate to act in order to defend itself and its citizens from the Houthis' attacks.
Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari further highlighted that the Houthis, which are doing Iran's bidding, have launched hundreds of projectiles toward Israeli territory over the past 14 months, to include more than 200 ballistic missiles and approximately 170 unmanned aerial vehicles.
Over the last 14 months, the Iran-backed Houthi terror regime in Yemen has launched hundreds of missile and UAV attacks against the State of Israel. This happened again tonight. The Houthi terror regime fired a missile toward central Israel, forcing millions of civilians to take cover in bomb shelters. In the last 2 weeks only, the Houthis fired a drone that hit an apartment block in southern Israel, and on Sunday they fired a long-range missile towards central Israel. The Houthis have been carrying out attacks against Israel in violation of international law, and the Houthi regime is a threat to peace and security in the region. The Houthis are also targeting other countries in the Middle East, the United States, and other countries in the world. With their attacks on international shipping vessels and routes in the Red Sea and other places, the Houthis have become a global threat. Who is behind the Houthis? Iran. The regime in Iran funds, arms, and directs the Houthis' terror activities.
Meanwhile, at the Defense Ministry's headquarters in Tel Aviv, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz leveled a warning to the Houthi leadership over their blatant belligerence towards the State of Israel.
Tonight, we once again attacked strategic targets of the Houthis in Yemen. I recommend the leaders of the Houthis to see, comprehend, and remember, whoever raises their hand against the State of Israel, its hand will be cut off. Whoever harms Israel will be harmed sevenfold. We will strike with force and will not allow the continuation of this situation of shooting and threats against the State of Israel.
It is important to know that 5 strategic targets were destroyed throughout Yemen, to include energy infrastructure and Houthi ports, which essentially crippled their ability to import smuggled munitions.
The Israeli aggression will not deter Yemen and Yemenis from fulfilling their religious and moral duty to respond to its massacres in the Gaza Strip, as well as to retaliate against this brutal aggression by continuing support and striking all hostile targets with appropriate weaponry. The operations of the Yemeni Houthi armed forces will not cease until the aggression against Gaza stops and the siege is lifted.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the latest Israeli retaliatory strikes against the Houthis in Yemen, while further pointing out that the Houthis are almost the last tentacle in Iran's axis of evil.
After Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Assad regime in Syria, the Houthis are almost the last arm of Iran's axis of evil. They are finding out, and will find out, the hard way that whoever harms Israel will pay a very heavy price.
Turning to New York, where outgoing Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a Q&A session at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, voiced concern over the ongoing belligerence by the Houthis, raising doubts about whether they would cease their attacks against freedom of navigation in the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb and adjacent waterways, as well as against Israel, once a ceasefire for Gaza is implemented.
The rise of the Houthis, the capacity they've developed, fully supported by Iran, has gotten them to a place where they have assets that have built up that they have not been shy about using and continue to use. Now, they've tied what they're doing to Gaza. My concern, I think our shared concern, is that even when we get to the point where the conflict in Gaza is over, the war in Gaza is over, they may well continue because they put themselves on the world stage.
Blinken went on to stress that the past year has not been good for the Islamic Republic of Iran.
There's no doubt this has not been a good year for Iran, and we're seeing that play out every single day. And I think Iran has to make some fundamental choices. One choice it could make and should make is to focus on itself and focus on trying to build a better, more successful country that delivers for its people, which is clearly what most Iranians want, and to stop getting involved in these adventures or misadventures throughout the region and beyond.
Washington's outgoing top diplomat further addressed Israel's successes vis-à-vis the Gaza Strip.
From Israel's perspective, I think they've accomplished very significant and important strategic goals militarily. But the question now is, how do you translate those into enduring political successes? How do you move from Gaza, where by Israel's own account, they've achieved what they fundamentally set out to achieve, and trying to ensure that October 7th never happens again, dismantle Hamas's military capacity? They've done that. Deal with the leaders who are responsible for October 7th. They've done that. Now is the time, assuming we get the hostages back, to move this to another place where they're not left holding the bag in Gaza, because if they do, if they wind up holding the bag, they'll be dealing with an insurgency for years, and that's not in their interest.
Secretary Blinken continued by addressing the necessity to ensure that Hamas does not maintain any capacity to rule the Gaza Strip, while also highlighting the importance of seeing the return of Israeli and Lebanese civilians to the heavily battered Israel-Lebanon border region.
So Gaza has to be translated into something different that ensures that Hamas is not in any way in charge, that Israel doesn't have to be, and that there's something coherent that follows that enables the governance, the security, the reconstruction of Gaza. When it comes to Lebanon and Hezbollah, I think there's an extraordinary opportunity not only to have dealt with pushing Hezbollah back, allowing Israelis who've been chased from their homes in the north, 70, 80,000, to go back home, as well as Lebanese to go back to their homes in southern Lebanon.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to once again thank all of you who stand in support of TV7 Israel, both in prayer and finance. Since TV7 Israel is an exclusively donation-based non-profit ministry, your support is vital for our continued operations here in Jerusalem. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, please consider making a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you as ever, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Essen wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.